Justice Department now has a little more than 3 weeks to release any files related to its Jeffrey Epstein investigation. It comes after Congress quickly passed that legislation compelling the department to do so. President Trump signing that bill into law despite months of calling the entire situation a Democrat hoax. Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller is live in New York right now. And Alex, is there confidence that this deadline will lead to a massive document dump?
Well, there is looming concerns on both sides of the aisle in Congress, I should say. We just saw Congressman Thomas Massie, who led that bill that was eventually signed into law. We saw him comment on an interview that was recently done with FBI Director Kash Patel, where he was asked specifically about whether they would be turning over information. And Patel essentially said that they are working, the FBI, with the Department of Justice to figure out what documents they can release. Now look at this tweet from Congressman Massie. He said he found this response to be deflective. He did not feel as though this was a thorough enough response. Of course, the law that he is talking about says that they need to turn over all documents with redactions if necessary, but in that law, it says that the Department of Justice has to explain any redactions that they do. Anything that they decide to redact, they have to say why, and that is to prevent them from redacting things that might just be simply unflattering to people. Now, Democratic sources on the committee tell me that there's also a concern there. They tell me that in their opinion, they're calling this an intense White House cover-up that's happening now. Likely, they told me, directed by the president and facilitated by the Attorney General. They sent Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, this letter just 5 days ago talking about their concerns, and they wrote in this letter that they're reminding them that the subpoena that they issued, the investigative committee issued a subpoena, that is separate from the legislation that we saw the president sign last week. What that means is that the subpoena is not allowed to have redactions. Of course, when you look at a piece of legislation and you see that these redactions are going to come, that is because the public does not need to know certain information. But this letter from Democrats just a couple of days ago reminds the Department of Justice that it is not the same rules for the committee, that they expect to see everything without redactions. And they also have been receiving materials from Jeffrey Epstein's estate directly. When looking at the two, they were, this source basically said that the information that they're getting from the Department of Justice so far is not even close to as thorough as the information they have received from the Epstein estate, and that they expect to continue to receive more information from the estate as well.
Alex, now to the grand jury testimony. This summer, we saw two separate New York judges rule against releasing that testimony in both Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's cases, as well as one down in Florida. Are we going to see the same thing happen?
We're seeing those same requests made right now, and we saw those denials this summer. The judges essentially saying there's not that much in here. You didn't provide sufficient reason for why you need these files. And on top of it, they say these grand jury files are in the main file. So if you release the files, you'll see the grand jury testimony. They did not want to touch this. We are seeing now the Department of Justice ask all three of those judges again to release the grand jury files. Same exact request. This time, though, they say they have a reason, that it's because this bill was signed into law and that they need to see it. Now, this is a rapidly evolving situation. They say public production of the grand jury material is required because of this law. And just just last night, rather, a judge in New York, the one in charge of Maxwell's case, put out a filing saying that by December 3rd, next Wednesday, both Maxwell's team and victims needed to submit letters talking about what they wanted to see redacted, any concerns that they had, so that this could be done rather quickly. All of these requests have been asked to be expedited, obviously, because of this 30-day deadline for the Department of Justice. And just in the last couple of minutes, there was a response by the Department of Justice specifically to this judge. The judge wanted to know what kinds of things they would be considering publishing, and essentially the Department of Justice says they're actually conferring with the victims right now, which, by the way, has not happened really at all. They've not interviewed victims, but they did say they're conferring with them to figure out what they want to see redacted, whether they want their names redacted, that kind of thing. And they were also asked what kind of things they're going to be producing, and they gave a very long list that I'm still working through, but already what I've seen: search warrants, financial records, travel records, subpoena records that the grand jury saw from internet providers, records from various agencies, school records, arrest reports, booking records. You get the idea. They are planning to release a lot of very detailed information, and so we are waiting to see what letters they submit to the judge to explain what they want to see redacted, and whether any of these judges are going to agree to this after just denying it a couple of months ago.
You know, Alex, even without the release of the files, both the Democrats and the Republicans on the House committee say they're pushing forward, even widening their investigation. What have they told you about their plans?
Yeah, they do say that they're widening their investigation. Some things they agree on, some things they don't. Now, during the government shutdown, there was a list of people that were going to be interviewed behind closed doors by the committee, and those included both former President Bill Clinton, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. They were on the list. Now, that was postponed, I think, in part because of the shutdown. Now the Republicans on the committee are asking them to come back and testify December 17th and December 18th. That is, remember, just 2 days, 1 day before that December 19th deadline that we expect to see these files released. So that is on the record there. And then Democrats have told me that they are planning to widen this investigation, that they want to go after financial records. They've already been able to look at 2 specific banks, but there's plans to do more. They want to hear from Maxwell. Both sides are in agreement that they want to hear from Ghislaine Maxwell, TBD, about whether that actually happens. And then they have tried to hear from former Prince Andrew. Obviously, we know his title was revoked. They made a request that he come testify. That has been denied. So far, he has not agreed to that. And essentially what the Democrats have told me is that they don't believe there's really any legal mechanism that they can, compel him to do so. But the UK's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, putting out a statement to The Guardian just yesterday about this, commenting, saying he didn't want to comment specifically on a particular case, but he said, as a general principle, I've held for a very, very long time that anybody who has got relevant information in relation to these kinds of cases should give that evidence to those who need it. So, there's a possibility that we could hear from Andrew. Obviously, he is very involved in this case with the allegations, particularly with Virginia Giuffre, and knowing that he was a very close friend of Jeffrey Epstein, rode on his plane multiple times, so surely he has a lot of information that the committee wants to hear.
Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller live in New York for us. Alex, as always, thank you.